What now? Trump, tariffs, and trade wars are still flooding media channels and capturing headlines everywhere. How will conflicts and ever-changing politics affect global markets? The formulation of an attempt at an answer can come from the Nonlinear Graphical Analysis Methods.
By Corrado Cantore.
Rome, June 20th, 2025. Figure 1. The general picture of the stock markets as described by the MSCI World Index in dollars is developing in the long term in a positive trend well described by the parabolic channels illustrated in the figure and traced with the use of parabolic involutes, which constitute the basic fulcrum of all the analyses presented here. In the long term, the MSCI World Dollar Index only left this broad channel of orderly growth during the coronavirus pandemic in spring 2020. Figure 2. The transition from the nonlinear graphical analysis methods, which concern only the use of parabolic involutes and cubic Bezier curves to the chart of the financial market in question, to the graphical algorithmic analysis methods which, on the other hand, see the application of parabolic involutes to the graphical interpretation of both the RSI indicator and the OBV indicator, have signaled important movements on the general picture of the markets at the times indicated by point A and point B. At the point indicated by the letter A, the RSI indicator exceeded the green resistance parabolic involute upwards, providing in that circumstance an indication of the opening of long positions coinciding, moreover, with the overcoming by the MSCI World Index in dollars of the blue intermediate parabolic involute. At the point indicated by the letter point B, the RSI indicator with a frequency of 10 months breached the support of the red parabolic involute, providing a clear and convincing indication on the opportunity to close long positions. The indication was particularly significant for the fact that it occurred at the relative highs of the period, i.e. when the index reached the pair of resistance green parabolic involutes, with the consequent indication of closing long positions on the absolute highs of the period. Figure 3. The dynamics recorded by the stock markets in recent months are, at least at the moment, interpretable as the manifestation of strong volatility, which finds an interesting graphic representation in the dynamics of the MSCI Europe Value Index described in the figure. In fact, the index has developed this strong volatility when it leaves both support parabolic channels, such as strongly concave, and resistance channels, such as the green and yellow ones, positioned almost completely horizontally. The use of parabolic channels composed of two parabolic involutes is useful not only for perceiving the actual evolution of a financial market, understood as a market that develops in a positive or negative trend within a space delimited by a parabolic involute of support and another of resistance, but also allows to perceive what we can define as the edges of a trend in the medium and long term. The dynamics of the European stock market as a whole can also be interpreted with the application of nonlinear graphical analysis methods to its Euro Stoxx 50 index. Let's see what indications emerge from this analysis. Figure 4. The nonlinear graphical analysis methods applied to the financial markets and for which I am working in the implementation of special add-ons for Metastock are based both on the tracing of parabolic involutes, to be interpreted as vertical axis parabolas suitably positioned on the Cartesian plane so as to be tangent to 3 points of minimum or maximum, and on the tracing of cubic Bezier curves, such as the green, blue, and red ones described in the figure. The use of cubic Bezier curves allows us to perceive the harmonious development of a financial market made up of an alternation of positive and negative phases. In the formation of the pullback of April 7th, 2025, in its intraday excursions, the Euro Stoxx 50 index reached and recognized with extreme rigor the double support formed on one side by the red Bezier curve and on the other side by the turquoise parabolic involute in dashes. From my point of view, it can be considered that the strong positive movement that has developed since that date can also be read as a reaction to a particularly clear and effective support indication, as we read in the figure. Figure 5. The evolution of the MSCI North America Index, but more generally of the entire American stock market that it represents, is well perceptible with the tracing of a very regular parabolic channel such as the one we read in the figure, and which sees the transition from a representation of the general MSCI World Indices with a monthly time frame to this one with a weekly time frame. In addition to the strict compliance with the indications provided by the parabolic channel in question, the behavior of the MSCI World North America Index, but, as already mentioned, in fact a large part of the indices of the American stock market has respected the formation of important highs gradually recorded for the creation of subsequent minimum levels upon reaching and recognizing which important recovery movements have been initiated. The joint reading of the indications of nonlinear graphic analysis with those of the classic technical analysis, i.e. based on the tracing of trend lines, supports and resistance, etc., is always useful, and in this regard it is interesting to note how the MSCI North America Index developed its recovery movement at the beginning of April slightly ahead of the reaching of the parabolic channel formed by the green and red parabolic involutes. Later we will see the behavior of the Dow Jones, S&P 500 and Nasdaq 100 indices in the homologous technical situation of rebound at the beginning of April 2025. Figure 6. The evolution of the MSCI North America Index, but more generally of the entire American stock market that it represents, has seen a movement of strong growth that developed during 2017 and ended in January 2018 with the formation of a particular pinnacle. It is completely imperceptible in the figure in question on the chart of the index, but it is well evidenced by the behavior of its RSI indicator which, in the phase of its formation, exceeded upwards a technical level described by the green horizontal line at which in the previous period, and also in the period following this anomalous event, it interrupted the phases of momentary growth. The reason for the formation of this pinnacle, as I have had the opportunity to explain in other papers, concerns the fact that in that circumstance the Dow Jones Index reached a trend line on a logarithmic scale chart, drawn from a relative high of 1899 to be tangent to the highs of 1929 and 2000, and for this reason it was defined by me as a multi-secular trend line. In the event of a new downturn in the U.S. stock market, it will certainly be not only interesting, but also useful to check the behavior of the Dow Jones Index in relation to this long-term trend line. With reference to the indications of a graphical order that we can read in the figure, it is interesting to take note of the parabolic channel formed by the two red parabolic involutes traced on the chart of the RSI indicator in the lower part of the figure. The lower red parabolic involute can now exert a function of resistance to the growth of the RSI indicator and consequently of the index, as we are going to learn more about with the more detailed examination of the Dow Jones Index. Figure 7. The corrective action due to Donald Trump's customs policies has been completely coincident with the appearance of important graphic signals relating to the long-term evolution of the Dow Jones Index. The figure shows the signaling effectiveness provided by the turquoise, green and red Bezier curves and also by the parabolic channel formed by the two yellow parabolic involutes with dashes. With the election of U.S. President Donald Trump, the American stock market, and in particular the Bitcoin market that we will get to know later, have recorded significant growth with the effect of leading the Dow Jones Index to abandon the upper turquoise Bezier curve upwards. The subsequent violation of the same led to the development of the corrective movement, which was exhausted only at the beginning of April 2025. It is interesting to note in the figure the good response provided by the support exerted by the Bezier curves and in particular the lower red one at which the rebound started as of April 7, 2025. Figure 8. Before examining in detail the behavior of the corrective movement of the first months of 2025, I think it is interesting to bring the attention of our listeners to the long-term chart of the Dow Jones Index. It is still interpreted by cubic Bezier curves and long-term parabolic involutes traced from the lows of the American stock market formed in 2009 following the collapse of the Lehman Brothers Bank. The interesting aspect that emerges in the figure concerns the signaling similarities provided by these two nonlinear graphical analysis tools, parabolic involutes and cubic Bezier curves. The former are the graphic expression of a parabola with a vertical axis and therefore, as evident as it is a quadratic order function that sees the value of time squared, while the second, as the name suggests, is the expression of a cubic function or, more rigorously, of a function that sees the expression of time squared and cubed. Another important aspect that emerges in the figure concerns the fact that to date, while the parabolic involute tracking add-ons are sufficiently tested and sufficiently reliable and therefore considered ready for their marketing, the Bezier curve tracking add-ons still require some tests before they can be considered new and reliable add-ons available to all metastock operators. Figure 9. We complete these considerations relating to graphical algorithmic analysis methods by presenting two graphs still relating to the Dow Jones Index. This figure illustrates the contents that graphical algorithmic analysis can propose in terms of operational trading, while in the following figure we will examine the contribution it provides in the field of asset allocation. In the figure, it is decidedly interesting to take note of the long-term support exerted by the red parabolic involute drawn on the RSI indicator on the basis of the gradually reported rebounds. Interesting opportunities could be seized to open long positions on the U.S. stock market. It is particularly important to take note of the positioning of the RSI indicator in relation to this red support parabolic involute, as any violation of it would be to be read as an important signal of closing long positions and opening short positions. In that circumstance, it would become entirely reasonable to expect an excursion of the Dow Jones Index from current levels until it reaches the support exerted by the yellow lower Bezier curve positioned in the 37,700 point area. This target level, placed at about 10% below current levels, clearly tends to increase day after day due to the positive slope of the Bezier curve under consideration. The possible achievement and verification of this yellow Bezier curve would be read as a very special attention due to the fact that it is substantially very similar, at least in recent months, to the multi-secular trend line seen previously. For this reason, in the event of its achievement and prompt rebound, that movement will have to be read as the formation of an important minimum to be used, even with the setting of the relative stop losses, as an indispensable opportunity to open long-term long positions on the American stock market. Still with reference to the chart of the RSI indicator, It is interesting to take note of the rigor with which the green convex upper parabolic involute has so far slowed down the growth of the RSI indicator, and consequently it will be to be read as extremely important to mark the failure by the lower parabolic involute of red support, or rather the overcoming of the parabolic involute of green resistance. Figure 10. The perception of the overall picture of a financial market with the use of graphical algorithmic analysis methods includes both the application of parabolic involutes to the chart of its RSI indicator and to the chart of its OBV indicator. Based on what emerges from the behavior of the RSI indicator in relation to the different parabolic involutes traced on it, it is possible to perceive the dominant sentiment taking place on the financial market. Similarly, based on what emerges from the behavior of the OBV indicator, again in relation to the parabolic involutes applied to it, it is possible to perceive the degree of robustness of the trend in progress. We are not here to develop new considerations concerning these two important aspects to the advantage of reporting the positioning of the RSI indicator, reproposed in the figure with an adjustment of the frequency from 36 days to that of 72 days. On the basis of this frequency, the signal content of resistance exerted by the red lower parabolic involute emerges clearly. On the basis of what is described by the evolution of the RSI indicator in relation to this red parabolic involute, one cannot fail to take into account this signal of resistance thus observed. Figure 11. In order to promote the diffusion of nonlinear graphic analysis and graphical algorithmic analysis methods, together with Metastock, I am pleased to offer a series of 3 add-ons with which it is possible to draw the graph you read in the figure totally free of charge. With regard to the free use of the add-ons, it is briefly explained in the figure of the long-term Dow Jones Index, in which there are parabolic involutes traced both on the index chart and on the charts of the 2 algorithmic indicators with the free version of the add-ons of the Cantor-Parval family. The only limitation placed on free add-ons concerns the fact that the 3 points of tangency cannot be placed beyond the date of January 31st, 2020, but even with this limitation, they can nevertheless be particularly useful in the long-term examination of financial markets. A more detailed reading of the graph shows how the green and red parabolic involutes that make up the parabolic channel positioned on the index chart have been plotted with the free version of the Cantor-Parval F add-on, as well as those plotted on the charts of the 2 algorithmic indicators RSI and OBV. Despite this characteristic, the various parabolic involutes that can be read in the figure continue to deploy all their interpretative capacity of the evolution of the Dow Jones Index, even in these days of high volatility. Figure 12. The evolution of the S&P 500 index in the long term highlights the good respect of an objectively very regular parabolic channel identifiable with the tracing of the 2 red and green parabolic involutes. They are traced with points of tangency prior to 2020, and for this reason they can be executed free of charge and updated daily with the Cantor-Parval F add-on. The letter F, an acronym for free, indicates the add-ons available for free. Leaving aside the movement of the years 2007 to 2008, in fact, the S&P 500 index has abandoned the parabolic channel only once downwards on the occasion of the coronavirus-19 pandemic. It has abandoned it twice upwards in the phases of clear overcoming of the green upper parabolic involute. It is interesting to pay attention to the feedback by the S&P 500 index of parabolic involutes in the period after 2022 in those years. The index found the presence of both the red and the green lower parabolic involute on which it formed lows also during 2024 and especially the rebound in April 2025. Perceiving the feedback of such a long-term graphic signal as that provided by the parabolic support involute traced since 1999 could not fail to add a high awareness to the signal of possible exhaustion of the corrective action at the levels of the 2022 high. The reason for this high awareness originates from the fact that this minimum was formed on the feedback of a very important and very extended graphic signal over time, which the red parabolic involute in question provided in an absolutely clear and objective way. More specifically, the figure shows the feedback exerted by this parabolic involute 8 times in the last 25 years by the American Stock Market Index, during which only in one circumstance has it been violated during the spread of the coronavirus-19 pandemic. Figure 13. In parallel to the cubic Bezier curves, the nonlinear graphical analysis methods mainly use parabolic involutes. They are common vertical axis parabolas, but appropriately positioned on the graph of the financial market in question so as to be tangent to 3 minimum or maximum points, i.e. tangents on 3 peaks or 3 inflections developed by the market in its past. The joint use of 2 parabolic involutes placed parallel to each other makes it possible to trace parabolic channels that facilitate not only the visual perception of the trend taking place on the financial market in question, but contribute convincingly to forming in the operator a high awareness of the movement in progress. The nonlinear graphical analysis deploys a truly surprising effectiveness, as visible in the figure, with its application to the chart of an algorithmic indicator such as the RSI indicator illustrated. This particular application is called graphical algorithmic analysis. The drawing of circles on the chart of both the SP 500 index and the chart of the RSI indicator has a predominantly visual function designed to help make collective decisions, especially concerning long-term investments, to be taken jointly by some operators gathered in special meetings. The representation of the evolution trend with these circles, which can be traced back to concepts of oscillatory circles, which, however, we do not want to describe here, helps to deploy the descriptive effectiveness of the evolution of a market by the nonlinear graphic analysis methods and even more by the graphical algorithmic analysis methods with particular reference to the evolution of the RSI indicator. Figure 14. An aspect of the utmost importance concerning parabolic involutes, but even more so we should talk about all the nonlinear graphical analysis methods when compared with the linear graphical analysis methods, based on the tracing of parabolic involutes, is called as principle of the long memory of parabolic involutes. In very simple terms, this expression is intended to highlight the peculiarity of the curves that are part of the nonlinear graphical analysis methods of being able to follow the actual evolution of the market to which they are applied in the phases of growth and decline, which is certainly not feasible with the use of trendline tracing alone. The application of the principle of the long memory of parabolic involutes to the Nasdaq 100 stock index highlights its high effectiveness in a very interesting way. In the figure you can see the application of parabolic involutes positioned in a parallel way to the red support one. The set of new parabolic involutes presented here in dashes has made it possible to signal the arrival of particular technical situations worthy of a more in-depth examination of the technical framework of the index itself, especially from an asset allocation perspective. In the meantime, let's take note of how the red parabolic involute traced on the first 3 points concerning, respectively, the 2002 low, The 2009 low produced following the failure of the American bank Lehman Brothers, and finally the new 2016 low produced with the British Brexit, has allowed us to indicate with high rigor the subsequent formation of new lows indicated with the letters D and E. Figure 15. The interpretation of the evolution of the Nasdaq 100 index over the last decade with the graphical algorithmic analysis methods, which can be read in the figure, highlights in a rather clear and convincing way the usefulness of placing due trust in the signals that can be read on the basis of the behavior of the RSI indicator in relation to one or more parabolic involutes. In fact, the figure shows the rich information proposed by the blue concave parabolic involute, which was born as a support parabolic involute to change its role in 2021 following its violation into a resistance parabolic involute. Particularly clear and convincing are the bearish pullback formations signaled by the reaches of the aforementioned parabolic involute by its RSI indicator. The signals of profit-taking of short-term long positions were not as easily perceptible with the nonlinear graphical analysis methods based on the plotting of parabolic involutes on the index chart alone. Equally interesting signaling content is offered by the red parabolic involute of resistance, and even more by the yellow one. The recent simultaneous signaling of the formation of a double top by the Nasdaq 100 index and the achievement by the 55-period RSI indicator of this yellow parabolic involute of resistance confers a reading of extreme caution in the operations inherent in the stocks of the Nasdaq 100 index. Figure 16. In its long-term evolutions, Bitcoin responds very accurately to certain indications attributable to the methods of nonlinear graphic analysis and graphical algorithmic analysis. In this regard, we present two situations, the first of which substantially responds to decisions attributable to asset allocation operations, while the second is closer to operational trading decisions. The figure shows the result in November 2024, at the time of the American elections, of the long-term yellow parabolic involute, beyond which a very positive phase began with the passage of prices from $70,000 to $100,000 in a short time. In the subsequent corrective phase, Bitcoin again verified the support exerted by this long-term yellow parabolic involute at the same time as the support exerted by both the red Bezier curve and the blue concave parabolic involute. As can be seen in the figure, in the first 10 days of April 2025, this formidable support was produced that could not fail to be seized for the opening of a new long position which, even in the situation, brought Bitcoin back above $100,000. Figure 17. The strong upward movement that took Bitcoin from around $70,000 to $100,000 could be perceived by simply overcoming the resistance area indicated by the blue rectangle. On the other hand, the interpretation of Bitcoin's dynamics, presented by me in another paper, highlighted the opportunity to open these long positions in advance of the signal and in particular on the low that formed the day before the U.S. elections in November. The contribution provided by the graphical algorithmic analysis methods, which sees the strict compliance by the RSI indicator with some parabolic involutes, has facilitated the perception of this dynamic, as well as the signals of closure of long positions when Bitcoin violates the red parabolic involute traced on it. The graphical algorithmic analysis methods applied to Bitcoin in recent times have signaled the opportunity to open new long positions when Bitcoin overcomes the two turquoise convex parabolic involutes in a favorable climate of a dominant sentiment. that has returned positive and well described by the evolution of the RSI indicator in relation to the parabolic channel in place since November 2024 and formed by the two blue parabolic involutes. Figure 18. The long-term evolution of the euro-dollar exchange rate that we read in the figure is a very valid representation of the effectiveness expressed by the principle of the long memory of parabolic involutes. And in fact, all the parabolic channels described have a very long time span. It is particularly important to pay attention to the signaling content provided by the upper parabolic channel composed of the green convex parabolic involute and the blue one below. This parabolic channel examines the evolution of this very important exchange rate starting from highs recorded at the end of the 80s of the last century, to intercept maximum values of the euro against the dollar in 2008 and finally recent highs in 2022. No less interesting are the indications presented by the large, moderately concave parabolic channel formed by two green parabolic involutes on the upper side and two red ones on the lower side, within which the movement of the exchange rate of the last 2 years is well positioned. It is interesting to bring to the attention of those who follow us that the graph represented here can also be traced with the use of the Cantor-Parvalov add-on only, i.e. the one offered free of charge, as almost all the points of tangency of the parabolic involutes described here have dates no later than January 31st, 2020. The phase of weakening of the US dollar against the euro may have come to an end, at least temporarily, due to the RSI indicator reaching the pair of parabolic involute of resistance despite the fact that there is still plenty of room for further weakening of the dollar before reaching the two green parabolic involutes that make up the parabolic channel, almost completely horizontal. Only in the presence of a convincing confirmation of these two green parabolic involutes would I be inclined to consider the phase of weakening of the dollar against the euro over. Figure 19. The facts inherent in the Israel-Iran war have led to an increase in the price of oil with a very convincing graphic effect that can be read in the figure both by the overcoming of the green parabolic involute of resistance and I would say above all, by the overcoming by the RSI indicator of the pair of green and red convex parallel parabolic involutes. On the basis of what can be read in the figure, it is therefore necessary to maintain a further bullish expectation of the price of oil. To change orientation, it would be necessary to see a re-entry of the same below the green parabolic involute, and even more a decisive re-entry of the RSI indicator below the two convex parabolic involutes. More generally, I would be inclined to consider the current phase of increase in the price of WTI oil exhausted only in the presence of a collapse of the RSI indicator under the support exerted by the slightly concave red lower parabolic involute, almost completely horizontal, with a parallel collapse of the price of oil under its yellow dashed parabolic involute. Figure 20. The evolution of the price of gold sees a good response from the nonlinear channel formed by the green Bezier curves from the 90s until around 2012. From that date onwards, the evolution of gold was well interpretable graphically by the parabolic channel formed by the two yellow concave parabolic involutes. The strong positive movement taking place on gold does not currently present a critical situation as its RSI indicator remains well inserted within the parabolic channel formed by the red upper parabolic involute and the blue lower parabolic involute. Even with these interesting and valuable indications, it is nevertheless necessary to develop an additional analysis on gold for any operations to be carried out on it. Figure 21. Ignoring the price levels reached so far, June 2025, Nevertheless, the bullish movement taking place on gold appears regular and as such predisposed to continue upwards. We express ourselves in this way because of the regularity of evolution of the RSI indicator within the parabolic channel formed by the blue, red, and green parabolic involutes. The regular evolution of the RSI indicator in this parabolic channel is to be interpreted as a plastic representation of the good, dominant sentiment, characterizing gold and as such capable of leading it to reach higher prices than the current ones. The always possible downward violation by the RSI indicator of the red parabolic involute will be read as a sign of weakening of this positive sentiment and which may lead to the closure of long positions. At the violation of the lower parabolic involute component of the parabolic channel drawn in yellow on the gold chart itself. Let's take note of this and take a further step of analysis, also paying attention to the evolution of volumes. Figure 22. A clear and convincing example of the canonical role reserved for graphical algorithmic analysis conducted with the use of the OBV indicator, is that of acting as confirmation of the signals that the RSI indicator can propose in a more timely manner. Such a situation is presented in the figure regarding the convincing signs of opening long positions on gold during 2024 at the point indicated by the letter A. From 2020 to 2024, gold formed a base of static resistance in the area of about $2,080 per ounce, at which, as indicated by the red circles, it stopped its growth 3 times. In 2024, near the point indicated by the letter A, it recorded a particularly positive dominant sentiment, readable by the overcoming by the RSI indicator of the turquoise parabolic involute together with the other positive signals that came from the dynamics of the OBV indicator. Also on the basis of what we read about gold, it can once again be said that the best decisions in terms of the application of discretionary technical analysis methods emerge from a contextual use of several techniques such as linear and nonlinear graphic analysis. But particularly valuable are the graphical algorithmic analysis methods based respectively on the RSI indicator and the OBV indicator. From now on, it will be appropriate to follow the behavior of the 72-day RSI indicator in relation to the support exerted by the red parabolic involute. Thank you for your attention to the webinar.
Dottore Corrado Cantore.
Rome, June 20th, 2025.